So again, good evening, everyone. Tonight is another auspicious night at Cross River Meditation Center. I'm going to begin a series of talks on the Anapanasati Sutta. Anapanasati means breath awareness or breath mindfulness. And I'm not sure, I'm never sure how long these series are going to last, but I'm going to be giving this series not just on one night. It's going to be on tonight, Thursday, and Saturday, and probably going to be 4 or 5 talks. The reason why is I want to also introduce a slightly expanded meditation instruction that relates to directly to the sutta. And the reason why I haven't done so earlier is I wanted to have the context of the sutta as part of the Sangha's understanding. Anapanasati Sutta, the word itself is used rather commonly in modern Buddhism. The underlying sutta, the Anapanasati Sutta, is rather obscured and hardly ever referenced in its entirety. There are sections of the sutta that are taken out of context and used as, erroneously used as instructions for meditation. And even as they're used that way, it's really contemplation, that their application is towards contemplation. But the Buddha only taught these sections that are often taken out of context to show or to describe the experience, in a very specific experience, specific to a group of people, to a group of senior monks who have developed, as the Buddha's words, the Heartwood of the Dhamma, meaning they've fully developed the Eightfold Path. And again, he's using these descriptions to simply do that, to describe how they're experiencing impermanent arisings during meditation. That'll become much more clear when I get through it. Has anybody read the article? You had a lot of time. It's about 8,000 words, so there's a lot to it. I encourage you all to read it when you have time. Again, I'll be referring to it in different classes, so there won't be any one class where I read the whole sutta. And as I want to introduce a slightly new meditation instruction or guided meditation, I want to first just read a small section of the sutta to put the new meditation instructions in context, and then we'll have a meditation on it, and then I'll give a little bit longer talk on tonight's on the Anapanasati Sutta. So that sounds good for everyone? So one thing just to be mindful of, even a meditation instruction or a meditation practice can develop a conditioned response to it, and we can become somewhat enamored or at least familiar with it. And so there may be some resistance to this slightly expanded instruction. But again, the reason why I'm giving it is the Anapanasati Sutta is a description of how to meditate. And there's really nowhere else in the canon that I've ever found, that I've read a lot of the canon, where the Buddha gives specific meditation instructions. So this and the Satipatthana Sutta can be looked at as instructions, but again, you have to also understand the entire context of the Buddha's teaching to understand these instructions. So this is just a small section of the sutta. And the sutta begins with the Buddha using these senior monks as an example of how to develop the Dhamma. And so this is in reference to those monks. In this community of monks, there are monks who remain devoted to mindfulness of the in-breath and the out-breath. Mindfulness of the in-breath and the out-breath, when appropriately developed, an important little phrase there, is of great benefit. Mindfulness of the in-breath and the out-breath, when appropriately developed, brings the four foundations of mindfulness to their culmination. Remember, so the four foundations of mindfulness are initially instructions on what to do during meditation when feelings and thoughts arise. And you'll see the reference to that in the new instructions. But what do we do when feelings and thoughts arise during meditation? According to the four foundations of mindfulness and everything that we've learned, back to the sensation of breathing. We don't get distracted by trying to analyze feelings or thoughts, describe them in any way, meaning to label them. The Buddha concludes that sutta, the Satipatthana Sutta, but it's included here to point out the importance of this. Friends, this is the direct path for the purification of all beings, for the cessation of sorrow and regret, for the disappearance of pain and distress, for establishing the right method of practice, and for complete unbinding. In other words, these four foundations of mindfulness. The four foundations of mindfulness, when appropriately developed, bring the seven factors for awakening to their culmination. The seven factors for awakening, when appropriately developed, brings clear knowing, meaning right understanding or right view, and release from clinging to wrong or ignorant views. You'll see as we get into the Anapanasati Sutta proper, the reference again to the four foundations of mindfulness and to the seven factors of awakening, including other aspects. In this sutta, the Buddha introduces all of the key elements of his Dhamma in this one sutta. David sent me a great email this afternoon, maybe this morning, I don't remember when it was that you can see the whole Dhamma in the next breath when you understand this sutta. And that really is true. When we develop the profound concentration and the refined mindfulness, meaning the overarching right view, the next breath is the Dhamma when it's focused that well. So thank you for sending me that, David. And I just wanted to check. I looked at David. I think David's wife and Helen and Liz's sister is joining us. So hello, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Okay, so we're going to come back to the sutta after our meditation, but find your relaxed meditative posture and get ready. So this first line is something that I often say to myself, and I used to use it earlier on, but I stopped using it. But I think it's an important way to begin our meditation. So gently close your eyes and gently close your mouth. And now is the time to meditate. Find your relaxed meditative posture, holding your back straight but not stiff. Your ears aligned with your shoulders, your nose aligned with your navel. Holding yourself gently, softly, lovingly. Allow yourself to settle into this room, settle onto your seat, settle into your body, and settle into your mind. Notice the sensation of breathing in your body. Become mindful of your inhalation and your exhalation, your in-breath and your out-breath. While remaining mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath, notice that feelings arise and thoughts are flowing. We are sensitive and conscious beings. Feelings arise and thoughts flow. The purpose of meditation is to increase concentration and not be distracted by the arising and passing away of feelings and thoughts. Notice the arising and passing away of your breath in your body. When you find that you are caught up in your thinking again, simply acknowledge the distraction and return mindfulness to your breathing. Relaxing your thoughts, remaining mindful of the arising and passing away of your breath in your body. And we will continue to meditate for 20 minutes with callbacks every 5 minutes. gently increasing concentration by remaining mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath. increasing concentration by remaining mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. Notice the impermanence of all feelings and thoughts as they arise, and return your mindfulness to the in-breath and the out-breath. And we'll meditate for 5 more minutes. Take a moment to notice the quality of your mind. Be at peace with your mind. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Thank you again for the shirt.
You're very welcome.
So there's a rather long introduction to the sutta, and you'll understand the reason for that when I get into it. So I'm not even sure if I'll get to the more of the sutta itself tonight, but we'll over the next 3 or 4 classes we'll get to the whole sutta, and we'll have established the context for that meditation instruction. If you have any questions while I'm reading, please just let me know. And at the end of what I'm reading, then we'll go around the room and discuss the sutta and hear any comments you might have on the sutta, or even I'd like to hear what you thought of the meditation instructions too. The Anapanasati Sutta is a discourse from the Buddha on the proper use of mindfulness during Shamatha-Vipassana meditation. The underlying and supportive theme for the sutta is a group of senior monks well established in the Heartwood of the Dhamma, meaning the Eightfold Path, and their ability to teach a useful and effective Dhamma. You'll see when I get into the beginning of the sutta, the Buddha offers great praise to these monks and how they've established the Dhamma. The purpose of meditation is to deepen concentration, to provide the foundation necessary to understand the 3 marks of existence, anicca, anatta, and dukkha. And the individual confusion and deluded thinking and ongoing stress and suffering, meaning dukkha. The 4 noble truths are the Buddhist teachings and the referential context for developing understanding and cessation of dukkha, and the 2 common conditions that give rise to dukkha, anicca, impermanence, and anatta, the not-self characteristic. So again, the reason why I'm saying this is to establish the proper context for understanding the sutta. One of the reasons why this is taken, I started writing commentary on the Anapanasati Sutta maybe even a couple years ago, and then in earnest about a year ago, and then even more in earnest towards the end of when we went through the series on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And what really got me looking at it, the Anapanasati Sutta was something that I read a long time ago, and I incorporated it pretty immediately into my own meditation practice, and that led to the old instructions from last week. But I realized that those instructions were really lacking some important direct context to this sutta. And some questions that came up in here, but a few online students that were quite agitated when they came across portions of the Anapanasati Sutta and were so distressed over taking the Buddha's descriptions of temporary experiences as instructions that it really threw them for a loop. And so that's another reason why I thought it's important to focus is this article and the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the Satipatthana Sutta, are going to be part of the next book that I hope to publish that just relates to meditation instructions as the Buddha taught that. Not that you can take them out of context. That book will have a lot of the other book in it anyway, by necessity. The 3 marks of existence describe the common human experience that results from a mind rooted in ignorance of 4 noble truths. The purpose of meditation is described in 2 suttas, among many others, the Kamsuka Sutta and the Yuganada Sutta. Both suttas stress the importance of increasing concentration or samadhi by calming the mind through mindfulness of the breath, and that supports useful insight or vipassana into the 3 marks of existence. In other words, it takes a well-concentrated mind to support and to quiet down enough to even recognize the interplay of wrong views of self and the environment in which that self has arisen. And saying it that way, that really is another way of saying that's the whole point of the Buddhist Dhamma, to recognize wrong view and develop right view. to understand what's occurring. It takes a concentrated mind, doesn't it? A mind that is conditioned towards ignorance is a mind that's continually distracted. So using words like samadhi and jhanas and conditioned mind and all that, that can somewhat complicate things, even though it's necessary. But the whole point of the Dhamma is to become well concentrated and not distracted by wrong views. So the Buddha, again, to support what the Anapanasati Sutta is about, so the Buddha taught meditation to do that, not to create more distraction by gross analysis of impermanent phenomena, which is the misapplication of this sutta. Samadhi, a well-concentrated, non-distracted mind, and the jhanas, the 4 stages of meditative absorption, are described in the Samadhi Sutta and the Saleka Sutta. We've talked about that, and they're on the line. I'm making reference to all of these in this article, and there's links to them at the end of the article. In order to understand the purpose and intent of any individual sutta, the complete context of the Buddha's teachings must be held in mind. After all, mindfulness means to hold in mind or to recollect. It is of primary importance to understand and to hold in mind the purpose and intent of the Buddha's Dhamma. Or else you don't have any way of applying any single sutta, except maybe the first sutta, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. But even then, how to develop it is not clear if you just read that sutta. Often during the Buddhist time and continuing today, Buddhist teachers promoting dharmas lacking this context and lacking a personal understanding of the Buddha's direct teachings freely dismiss much of the Buddhist teachings essential to context and developing understanding. It takes an overall understanding and development of some, let me call them superior suttas, understanding that dependent origination, the 4 noble truths, 3 marks of existence, and the not self characteristic, and seeing those teachings as superior teachings so you can understand the inferior but no less important suttas such as the Satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, or the Anapanasati Sutta. Stand alone, they're likely only going to lead to more confusion. But taken in that overall context, then we can understand how to apply it and what the Buddha is teaching here. Let me go back a line. The Buddhist teachers promoting dharmas lacking this context and a personal understanding of the Buddha's direct teachings dismiss much of the Buddha's teaching essential to context and developing understanding. Lacking understanding, one cannot teach understanding. Ignoring the Buddha's teachings to promote individual or culturally influenced views is another contributing cause of ongoing stress and disappointment. It only continues ignorance of 4 noble truths when things aren't taught in the context of 4 noble truths, or the importance of the Heartwood of the Dhamma, the Eightfold Path. And I think you've all experienced it. If it wasn't for your understanding of the Eightfold Path, you really wouldn't understand what the hell we're doing here, would you? Or why we're even meditating. Meditating, that keeps the focus on what we're doing, and it provides the framework and the direction. The Buddha consistently taught that the purpose of his teaching is to understand the arising and passing away of dukkha. He consistently taught that dukkha, or stress and suffering, identifying with craving after and clinging to impermanent objects, events, views, and ideas, and is rooted in ignorance of 4 noble truths. So often the fractionated application of the Anapanasati Sutta leads just to that, to self-identify with these things that are arising and passing away during meditation, rather than simply recognize that they're all part of an impermanent environment and come back to the sensation of breathing. Is that a hand up or just a scratch?
Scratch.
An impermanent sensation. The Buddha consistently taught that the recognition and abandonment of craving and clinging could be mindfully developed. That's the whole point of the Buddhist teachings. We can change the way we think. If we're mindful if we're well concentrated and mindful of the factors of the Eightfold Path, we can develop right view. The 7th factor of the Eightfold Path is right mindfulness. It implies that there's such a thing as wrong mindfulness, which would be holding in mind anything that distracts from the Dhamma. And in particular, the sutta, holding in mind the arising and the passing away, is what this sutta teaches, to develop concentration. And then, as you'll see, as the 4 or 5 talks progress, and then to hold in mind the different factors that contribute to awakening, such as the 7 factors of awakening and other things that are mentioned in the sutta. Yes?
Are those the things that you had mentioned earlier where taken out of context tend to just contemplation?
Yeah, it almost always happens when it's taught in that way to beginning with the breath. The Buddha teaches just if you find yourself breathing with a deep or long breath, simply notice it. If you find yourself breathing with a short or shallow breath, simply notice it. There's 4 lines in here that reference that, actually 8 lines. Those 8 lines have been taken in some Buddhist schools as the entire meditation instruction. In other words, we should manufacture long breaths and do that for, sometimes periods up to weeks. It's taught in that way. And so that's taking you away from the simple experience of deepening concentration, because you're concentrated on developing these long breaths, but it's a manufacture of something that should be just completely natural, however the breath is appearing in the body. And you'll see as the sutta goes on, talking about different experiences and different insights, which should be seen as just temporary thoughts that are arising, coming back to the sensation of breathing. So it's so important to understand that. This will probably be more clear later on, but I think there's enough context for understanding it. It's an aspect of a self-referential ego self to want to make something more out of even something as simple as meditation. It's not enough to just that I'm too important to just be thinking about my breath. I got to be thinking about my long breath, my short breath, and anything else that really might come to mind.
Well, your mind is clinging to your breath now instead of using it as the refuge.
That's it. And that's really the point of the whole sutta that the Buddha's teaching. And he's using these senior monks as an example of Dhamma practitioners that don't get distracted by things that are arising. They are so well advanced and they're able to teach others because they've developed that profound concentration of being mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath. And as we get into this, I'm laughing because the side comments might keep us out of it for a long time. As we get into it, you'll understand that what is developed by being simply mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath is a profound understanding of impermanence. Because when we're truly mindful, without any distractions, without any embellishments, the Buddha often uses a line, in and of itself, when we're mindful of the breath. I've changed that to be free of distraction, but I make note of it. In and of itself simply means that in and of itself, we're mindful of the breath, doesn't it? How could that lead to anything else? We're free of distraction. We're not adding or embellishing the breath in any way. And as we're mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath, that's why I changed the instructions, by the way, we're gaining a profound understanding of the impermanence of even the experience of breathing. There's an arising of phenomena, the breath, and there's a passing away of phenomena, the breath. It's such a powerful training in impermanence, isn't it? In the breath in any way. The Buddha's words on explaining what he teaches. I teach the truth of stress, meaning dukkha, and the truth of the Eightfold Path leading to the cessation of stress, nothing more. The Buddha says that repeatedly throughout the different suttas, just to remind people. We're not trying to explain everything that arises. We're not trying to explain all temporary phenomena. That's just a distraction as it relates to awakening. It doesn't mean that some things aren't important. There's a lot of things that are exciting in the phenomenal world. I think that we're going to go back to the moon, or at least try to. I think that's exciting to me. I always thought that was just a great thing to do. Some people won't agree. The point is that just that we're doing that, I don't want to be distracted by constantly thinking about how we're going to get to the moon and how I can get one of those seeds. That doesn't relate to the Dhamma, does it? But it's no less interesting. But developing an understanding of the impermanence of all things is the essence of the Dhamma. It's one of the three marks of existence. And how I relate or ignore impermanence, the not-self characteristic, is the cause or results in dukkha, unsatisfactory experiences. So again, David was so right. When you start looking at this sutta in its entirety, that the simple act of breath mindfulness meditation, when done appropriately, the Buddha uses the word, the Pali word translated to appropriately, incorporates the entire Dhamma. Because through the concentration developed in this, we're able to hold in mind, be mindful of all the other aspects. And in this sutta, the Buddha references that, just like he did in the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. Once concentration in mindfulness is established, we're able to support and integrate the superior teachings. The Anapanasati Sutta is taught to emphasize mindfulness of the breath as a stabilizing focus in order to deepen concentration. It is a well-concentrated mind that is necessary to recognize and abandon craving after and clinging to wrong views of self. How else could we do it? A mind that is ignorant, that is deluded, has to have a framework and a foundation for seeing its own ignorance and its own delusion. That's why the Buddha taught an Eightfold Path. The Anapanasati Sutta is another sutta that is misunderstood and misapplied due to ignoring the context of this sutta and the overall context of the Buddha's Dhamma. Ignorance is continued by dissecting and overemphasizing certain sections of this sutta that are only meant to describe discrete experiences as they may arise during Shamatha-Vipassana meditation. Overemphasizing through gross analysis of the common and impermanent experiences that arise during meditation is a subtle form of conceit. Conceit is another word for eye-making. We just talked about that. We're looking to establish ourselves even in a method that was taught by an awakened human being to discourage self-establishment in thoughts, views, and ideas. But yet a self-referential ego self is so intense and compulsed with establishing itself that it will even alter the teachings of an awakened human being to do so and create a doctrine of doing that. I don't want to get too far distracted, but I talk about that a lot, how a lot of the embellishments and adaptations to the Buddha's original teachings allows for the continued establishment of a self-referential ego personality rather than recognizing that personality and diminishing it through proper application. Overemphasizing common and permanent phenomena personalizes impermanent and impersonal phenomena. In this sense, personalization is clinging and only serves to maintain distraction. Conceit is continued eye-making rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. Continued ignorance of Four Noble Truths only continues the ongoing distraction of dukkha and brings no insight into the three marks of existence or Four Noble Truths. So it is the preoccupation with dukkha that is the ongoing distraction for our lives. We don't even recognize our own contributions to our suffering because we're so distracted by the suffering itself and by the strategies that we employ to keep ourselves distracted so we can continue to ignore our own ignorance, the cause of dukkha. And we do that in mostly not so subtle ways, except they become so familiar that they are now subtle, meaning we just create very busy lives. We're always on the go, or we're always doing things that keep us distracted, but seemingly engaged in things. But most of those things are unnecessary and just serve for further distraction. One of the defining characteristics, and I think all of you would agree with this, one of the defining characteristics as you really start to integrate the Dhamma is your life just starts to slow down a little bit, doesn't it? And you're not so distracted. You have a little bit more time in your life, or at least it seems that way, because you're not wasting it. You're not always engaged in things. It is in this gross analysis of the ordinary impermanent experiences that arises during meditation that furthers ignorance by creating further distraction. When seen in the overall context of the Buddha's Dhamma and the specific context of the sutta, it is clear that the Buddha is describing these experiences solely to point out, to be mindful of the impermanence of the arising phenomena and remain free of the distraction and return mindfulness to the breath. You'll see that in the instructions the Buddha gives here. Seeking to generate the experience described here or exaggerating their importance through gross analysis is a subtle but very common form of continuing ignorance through continued eye-making. Notice in this sutta that the Buddha first emphasizes the establishment in those monks of the Heartwood of the Dhamma. Heartwood refers to the Four Noble Truths in general and the Eightfold Path specifically. He then presents an elaborate and thorough description of the result in those monks from having established the Heartwood. It is only then that he describes the process of remaining free of distraction by always abandoning the distraction of whatever is arising and returning mindfulness to the breath. In the context of gaining insight into the three marks of existence, the experiences that arise during meditation are to be mindful of solely to bring insight into the impermanent nature of all phenomena. Using mindfulness in this manner is to deepen concentration by avoiding ignorance of what is arising without overemphasizing whatever that is arising. Simply notice what's occurring. Come back to the sensation of breathing. The modern mindfulness movement misunderstands and misapplies the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha's application of mindfulness, and encourages personalizing and clinging to impermanent and ordinary phenomena. It's just what's occurring. And if we're doing that in meditation, it's only going to increase off our cushion. But if we're developing concentration during meditation, off our cushion, that concentration is going to be increased. And it really is just that way. So why would we use meditation for any other purpose except to deepen concentration? It is the attempt to identify with impermanent phenomena that confusion, deluded thinking, and ongoing disappointing and unsatisfactory experiences arise. This includes unsatisfactory and confusing meditation and mindfulness practices. So recently I pointed this out to two students because it was appropriate in what they were developing. And they were talking about the unsatisfactory nature of their meditation. And it was because they were looking for more out of meditation, that it was becoming unsatisfying to them. In fact, when I hear the phrase, I've been meditating for X number of whatever, it could be days or it might be decades, and I'm not getting anywhere, it's because you're looking for something in your meditation that's not there. If you're using the method and looking for that method to deepen concentration, it's pretty apparent that it develops. But when you want something else, you're going to be disappointed because that's not what it's there. It's an aspect of dukkha. Wanting something to be different than it is an aspect of dukkha, isn't it? The Buddha's instructions on dukkha point that out. So if we want something different than proper meditation is going to provide, it's going to be disappointing, isn't it? So if you, and this is what I was relaying to these two particular students. If you find that your meditation practice is just disappointing and you're seemingly engaged in the method, look for what else you're trying to gain, and other than concentration. Because it works to gain concentration, doesn't it? It's very satisfying that way. There's no disappointment in it. But again, meditation is part of the larger framework of the Eightfold Path. It's what the Buddha is pointing out in the sutta too. Anatta is the word the Buddha used to describe that views established to describe a self are rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. Let go of the views. Anatta describes those views as not self, as these are views rooted in ignorance. Understanding the Buddha's meaning of anatta then develops the right intention to recognize and abandon all wrong views. Again, anatta means that the views that I'm using to establish and continue to describe myself in the world are wrong views. They're rooted in ignorance. They don't constitute a self. They're not a self. But as long as I continue to maintain those views, I'm insisting on maintaining something that is in itself rooted in ignorance. When I understand that profoundly, I'm going to let go of all of those views, won't I? And again, how do I do it? I develop the Eightfold Path. Using a proper meditation method, or I should say an appropriately applied meditation method. A self, anatta, rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truth, is driven by a mind continually distracted by impermanent phenomena. This self continues to establish itself by clinging to every thought, word, and idea that arise. This is a self-referential ego personality that continually personalizes impersonal phenomena and impermanent objects, events, views, and ideas, including what may arise during meditation. In fact, I would say, and specifically, unless there's something else directing that mind, specifically to anything that would arise in meditation, we'll make much more out of it. I held myself, almost got off on a little bit of a tangent. I did good, I did.
It's restraint.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Exaggerated analysis, wrong or unskillful mindfulness of ordinary mental, verbal, and physical fabrications avoids through continued ignorance the profound insight gained by abandoning clinging to phenomena and returning mindfulness to the breath in the body. So again, I'm saying the same thing a lot of different ways, just to emphasize the importance of just simply bringing the mindfulness back to the breath in the body. This singular intentional act of mindfulness brings useful and effective insight to the relationship between anatta, ignorant views of self, and anicca, the impermanence of all phenomena. The proper act of mindfulness directly interrupts the continued ignorance by attempting to further establish wrong views of self in every thought, word, and idea that occurs. It simply indirectly interrupts that ongoing process that otherwise would go uninterrupted. It would just continue ignorance. It is through recognizing and abandoning distracting but otherwise impermanent and ordinary occurrences during Shamatha-Vipassana meditation that the proper application of breath mindfulness is established. This is how the proper establishment of breath mindfulness interrupts the ongoing distraction of self-referential conditioned thinking and how profound concentration is developed. This is the proper use of Shamatha-Vipassana meditation as taught by an awakened human being. Notice in this sutta, the initial emphasis is on the senior monks who have actually developed the Eightfold Path and are teaching others. The qualities of mind described here are often confused as instruction rather than descriptions of qualities of mind, resulting from proper mindfulness of the Heartwood of the Dhamma, and qualifying these monks to teach the Dhamma. The Buddha's emphasis and enthusiasm and the theme of this sutta is to emphasize the importance of developing the Heartwood, not on continuing distraction, by exaggerating and personalizing ordinary phenomena, or teaching others to exaggerate and personalize ordinary and permanent phenomena. If we become enamored by our own type of practice, and we find ourselves in the position to teach others, we're certainly going to teach others that same thing, aren't we? This is something the Buddha recognized during his time, and one of the reasons why he was holding these particular monks out as examples is to make that point. If you want to learn the Buddha's Dhamma, you got to listen to people that have actually studied the Buddha's Dhamma. That's what he's teaching. What I'm teaching, I hope. An overall understanding of the Heartwood of the Dhamma and being mindful of the situational context of the Anapanasati Sutta is paramount to using this or any other sutta in a skillful manner. Lacking this understanding, one can only further ignorance. Developing understanding in this manner develops awakened right view, a penetrating and profound understanding of anicca, anatta, and dukkha, the three marks of existence, and a mind no longer grasping at objects, events, views, and ideas, a mind that's resting in equanimity. In keeping with the overarching context of the Dhamma, I have made contextual edits to the Anapanasati Sutta to minimize repetition and to modernize phraseology. Within the sutta, my commentary is, well, you don't need to hear that, my commentary is italicized. And particularly that part where the Buddha talks of being mindful in and of itself. To me, that's a little bit of an ambiguous phrase and can be translated, especially if you're looking to misapply this. So I've changed that line in and of itself to free of distraction, because obviously that's what the Buddhists mean. In and of itself. There's no embellishment to what's occurring. So I'm going to just begin to introduce this sutta, and then we'll continue it through the next class. This is the beginning of the sutta. I have heard that on one occasion the Buddha was staying at Savatthi in the eastern monastery. Many of the elder disciples were with him. I might as well read them. I think you've noticed that that most of my suttas are gender neutral. And I always do that when I'm pretty certain that there were monks and nuns in attendance. I'm not certain of that. That's why I've left the references mostly to monks here. No slight intended. Many of the elder disciples were with him. Venerable Sariputta, Mahamoggallana, Mahakassapa, Mahakakana, Mahakatita, Mahakapina, Mahakunda, Maharavata, and Mahananda, and many others. The only reason I say that is those are actors that come up throughout the Dhamma. Some of those are mentioned prominently in other suttas. So this was a core group that had already developed the Heartwood of the Dhamma, and the Buddha's using them as an example.
And they all have the Maha part
Yes.
in front of the great.
Yes, which signifies that they are Arahants at this point. Well, they are very well. The only thing I'll say in relation to the Dhamma is they might not necessarily be Arahants, fully awakened human beings, but they are well established in the Heartwood. How do I know that? Because the Buddha has said that. I don't want to put words in the Buddha's mouth. During this time, the elder monks were teaching the Dhamma. They were each teaching novice monks with groups ranging in size from 10 to as large as 40. So this was there was already a well-established sangha. Again, there's no way of putting a time frame on this. The new monks were learning quickly and correctly. The Buddha arrived and was seated in the open air, surrounded by the community of monks. Surveying the silent community, he addressed them. Monks, I am pleased with what is taking place here and the dedication to develop the Dhamma and the realization of Nibbana. Must have felt pretty good. Can you imagine that you're just starting out your Dhamma practice and the Buddha shows up? You're doing it right.
Envisioning our next retreat like this.
Well, thanks for this and the Satipatthana Sutta are going to be a large part of our spring retreat. So, and I'll get the schedule up and we'll get that going soon. Let me say that again. Monks, I am pleased with what is taking place here and the dedication to develop the Dhamma and realization of Nibbana, of awakening. As such, I will remain here at Savatthi for another month through the 4th month of the rains. This is during the rainy season. They always stayed into this one particular area of northern India. The monks in the surrounding countryside heard this and left for Savatthi to join the Buddha in that sangha. A short time later, the Buddha addressed the large but quiet community. It's interesting that twice in the sutta, being quiet is mentioned. It's emphasized that they're not. It's obviously a large group of people now, but they're not engaged in idle chatter. At least when the Buddha shows up. A short time later, the Buddha addressed the large but quiet community. Monks, this community of monks is free from idle chatter and is established on the pure Heartwood. I've explained what Heartwood means, so I'll say that. This community is worthy of gifts and worthy of hospitality. This community is worthy of offerings and worthy of respect. This community will bring much good for the world. Incredible words, aren't they? Due to their establishment in the Heartwood of the Dhamma, when a small gift is given to this community, it becomes great, and a great gift even greater. This community of monks is rare to see in the world. When I read that line years and years ago, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. First I had, why is this rare? Because a group of people that are actually following the Buddha's teachings is rare, even during the Buddha's time, and unfortunately, I would say just as rare today. This community of monks is rare to see in the world. This community of monks is such that it would be worth traveling for leagues, taking along provisions in order to learn from them. In this community of monks, there are monks who are Arahants. Answered that thing I just brought up. Arahants are awakened human beings who have fully developed the Eightfold Path and whose mental effluents have ended.
Effluents.
Pardon me?
Mental effluents.
Mental effluents. Yeah.
What a great combination of words.
Yeah, isn't it? And
So descriptive.
Yep. That kind of thinking is really,
Yeah.
it's really effluential. These Arahants have completed the task and have laid down the burden, in parentheses, my words, of continued eye-making, maintaining Anatta. The Buddha continues, they have attained the true goal and abandoned the fetter of becoming, my words, further ignorant. They are released through right understanding, such as this community of monks, referring to these elder monks. Think about the encouragement that the most novice monks and maybe nuns must have felt hearing this. They know that they're getting the real teachings. And they have, as an example, right in front of them, not just the Buddha, this small group of awakened human beings, such as this community of monks. In this community of monks, there are monks who, abandoning the 5 lower fetters, are totally unbound from clinging to ignorant views. Their minds, my word, continually resting in equanimity. Such are the monks in this community of monks. This is where the Buddha goes through a few lists that are well established in these monks. So I'm just going to read them. That'll probably be our talk for tonight. The 5 lower fetters are self-referential views, or anatta and I-making, grasping at rituals and practices that would only continue self-referential views, uncertainty, meaning lack of conviction, craving for sensory stimulation, which is often experienced as boredom. I just can't stand doing this or sitting quietly or listening to this guy anymore. Or ill will towards oneself and others. All of those are gone from, or have been put aside, mental effluents, by these senior monks. In this, the Buddha continues, in this community of monks, there are monks who, abandoning the first 3 fetters and with diminishing of passion, aversion, and deluded thinking, have established a heartwood and will make an ending to stress. They are in the stream of the Dhamma. They are resolute in developing, the cessation of suffering. Their minds are inclined towards awakening. Such are the monks in this community of monks. In this, now he's expanding his observation of what's occurring in the Sangha. In this community of monks, there are monks who remain devoted to the development of the 4 frames of reference, of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 right exertions, the 4 bases of power, the 5 faculties, the 5 strengths, the 7 factors of awakening, the Noble Eightfold Path. Such are the monks in this community of monks. And so the 4 frame of references, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, are what we initially do in meditation. Be mindful of the breath in the body, mindful of feelings arising and passing away, mindful of thoughts arising and passing away, and mindful of the present, but, I got to change that word. I have implement, but impermanent quality of mind. My words here. The Buddha is placing the Anapanasati Sutta in the context of the more extensive Satipatthana Sutta. The Dhamma can only be understood and practically applied within the overall context of dependent origination, the 4 noble truths, and the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The 4 right efforts are avoiding inappropriate thoughts, words, and deeds that have yet arisen. This relates directly to right effort, as the Buddha taught right effort in the Eightfold Path. Abandoning inappropriate thoughts, words, and deeds that have yet arisen. Abandoning inappropriate thoughts, words, and deeds that have arisen. Developing appropriate thoughts, words, and deeds that have yet arisen, and maintaining appropriate thoughts, words, and deeds for continual development of non-confusion and skillful qualities that have arisen. That's right effort. The 4 bases of power: calm, rooted in concentration. Persistence, rooted in that concentration. Persistence relates again to right effort. Right intention, rooted in concentration. Right intention is the 2nd factor of the Eightfold Path. We need concentration to support the ability to hold in mind right intention, the intention to recognize and abandon craving and clinging. Wisdom, rooted in that same concentration. The 5 faculties are conviction, which again relates to right effort. Enthusiastic engagement, sometimes called rapture or joyful engagement. Right mindfulness, the 7th factor of the Eightfold Path, and concentration developed through the 8th factor of the Eightfold Path. And wisdom. Wisdom is profound right view, a complete understanding of the true nature of life in the phenomenal world. The 5 strengths are conviction in the Dhamma, conscious, meaning having regret at our own. I'll read it the way I said it, and then I'll expand on it slightly. Conscience is regret at misconduct in thought, word, and deed. But in order to have that type of conscience, we have to have a well-concentrated mind, and we also have to have the right mindfulness to not excuse away some of the things that we do that we shouldn't be excusing away, which is just another way of saying continuing to ignore our own ignorance. Having that proper conscience is important, not as a way of beating ourselves up, but as a moral an internal moral benchmark for ourselves. Concern for the suffering that arises from misconduct for ourselves and for others. Persistence for integrating the Eightfold Path as a framework for mindfulness and for one's life. Wisdom or discernment, meaning penetrative understanding for the arising and passing away of suffering and of all phenomena. Discernment is the ability to see things appropriately and within the appropriate context. Discernment is a quality of right view. I might be giving them the impression that this is not part of the sutta. These are the Buddha's words was to mention these things. I'm giving the list of what they are. Is that clear? So the Buddha's not getting into this elaborate of an explanation. It's already, the audience that he's presenting this to already know what these things are. The 7 factors of awakening: mindfulness, penetrating investigation of the Dhamma, enthusiasm, rapture, calm, concentration, and equanimity, and then the Noble Eightfold Path the Buddha includes. Then the Buddha continues, after giving them the list that these senior monks and the community is integrating. The Buddha continues in the sutta. In this community of monks, there are monks who remain devoted to the development of goodwill and compassion, to concern and equanimity. They understand the relentless decay of the body and the impermanence of all conditioned things. Such are the monks in this community of monks. I'm just skipping over some of my commentary, but please read it. This is an important sutta to integrate. The Buddha continues, in this community of monks, there are monks who remain devoted to mindfulness. This is what I started with before. In this community of monks, there are monks who remain devoted to mindfulness of the in-breath and the out-breath. They are devoted to Shamatha-Vipassana meditation. Mindfulness of the in-breath and the out-breath, when appropriately developed, is of great benefit. Mindfulness of the in-breath and the out-breath, when appropriately developed, supports the concentration necessary that brings the 4 foundations of mindfulness to their culmination. Now, remember, in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that sutta concludes with having the refined mindfulness that can hold in mind and fully develop understanding of 4 Noble Truths. That's the conclusion of that sutta that the Buddha is referencing in this sutta, and that's his reference to bringing that understanding to culmination. Fully developing profound understanding of 4 Noble Truths. That's the proper and appropriate application of right mindfulness. Notice the Buddha's words here on appropriately developing mindfulness of the in-breath and the out-breath. In that last paragraph, it's by developing appropriately mindfulness of the in-breath and the out-breath that develops the concentration that supports the refined mindfulness of the entire path. The Buddha concludes the Satipatthana Sutta. Now, this is my commentary outside of the Anapanasati Sutta, just these few paragraphs. The Buddha concludes the Satipatthana Sutta with the following words that emphasize the proper context and required framework for meditation and mindfulness, as the Buddha taught meditation and mindfulness. Friends, this is a direct path for the purification of all beings, for the cessation of sorrow and regret, for the disappearance of pain and distress, for establishing the right method of practice, and for complete unbinding. In other words, these 4 foundations of mindfulness. Going back to establishing that in our meditation practice by being mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath. So maybe now you're understanding why I've added a little bit to our meditation instructions. The Buddha continues, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, when appropriately developed, bring the 7 factors for awakening to their culmination. The 7 factors for awakening, when appropriately developed, brings clear knowing, right understanding or right view, and release from clinging to wrong or ignorant views to their culmination. Now, how is the next section of this is called mindfulness of the in and out breathing. Now, how is mindfulness of in and out breathing appropriately developed to be of great benefit? A monk or a nun, I've added that little part here, the nun, having gone to the wilderness, to the shade of a tree or an empty building, sits down folding their legs crosswise and holding their body erect and setting mindfulness to the fore. What an important line. Mindfulness to the fore. mindfulness is the important thing. No matter what occurs now from this point on during meditation, bring mindfulness to the fore, not something that is arising. In that one line, mindfulness to the fore is completely ignored in most applications of this. Always mindful of the in-breath. Always mindful of the breath. He breathes in. Always mindful of the breath. He breathes out. When breathing in long, let me degenderize that. When breathing in long, they notice I am breathing in long. When breathing out long, they notice I am breathing out long. The misapplication of that, when you read that, how could you take that as instructions to manufacture a breath? But those are the Buddha's words. When you notice that you're breathing in long, you notice you're breathing in long. You're just noticing your breath. Or when breathing in short, they notice I am breathing in short. Or when breathing out short, they notice they are breathing out short. They simply notice the breath. While dispassionately and mindfully noticing the breath, the Buddha's words, they train themselves. I will breathe in sensitive to the entire body. They train themselves. I will breathe out sensitive to the entire body. Sensitive to the entire body often is taken as instruction to change one's focus from the breath to now beginning to incorporate bodily sensations as ever-changing points of focus. And of course, the bodily sensations are always changing. If we're trying to put a focus on them, it's like that game whack-a-mole. We're going to be our mind is going to be bouncing from one sensation to the next. When you look at it in the context that the Buddha just described, we're bringing mindfulness to the fore, not sensations, not bodily distractions. Mindfulness is what we're holding to the fore on our breath.
But John, it's bringing it to personal attention there too. I am mindful of my breath rather than breath in, breath out. Or
again, that's such an important, I'm sorry to interrupt you, it's such an important point because you have to, in order to understand the reference to I or the reference to an individual, you have to understand the entire Buddha's teaching. So it's necessary to reference an individual, but if the point of me during meditation is to recognize all my views that are rooted in ignorance and to develop an understanding of the impermanent nature of all things. By doing that, this meditator must be focused on the arising and passing away of the breath. It's just a necessary reference. Listen to the rest of the sutta and you'll see how the Buddha discourages any further eye-making beyond just an individual being mindful of the breath in the body. And I interrupt you. Was there more to your question?
that was the root of it.
Okay. Excuse me for interrupting. Okay. Sensitive to the entire body often is taken as instruction to change one's focus from the breath to now beginning to incorporate bodily sensations as ever-changing points of focus. This can only further a distracted mind and contradicts the next instruction, the calm bodily fabrication, and contradicts the context of the sutta, breath awareness. This would also contradict the instructions found in the Satipatthana Sutta to use meditation to deepen concentration to support refined mindfulness. The previous instruction to set mindfulness to the fore on the breath in the body reinforces the singular importance to remain mindful of the breath no matter what occurs during meditation. The Buddha's words, training oneself sensitive to the entire body. I think this is my words. To further explaining that line, sensitive to the body. Training oneself sensitive to the entire body in this context is instructions to have gentle awareness, sensitivity, for what is arising within one's body without reaction or distraction. If the Buddha wanted us to be more than just sensitive, gentle awareness, he would say, be oversensitive to what's occurring in your body. Increase your sensitivity. Bring the sensations to the fore rather than your mindfulness.
So this is just mindfulness of bodily fabrications. that he's talking about.
And being sensitive is a perfect word for that. Because sensitive is a sense of gentleness, isn't it? When I'm being sensitive to another person, I'm doing that with some mindfulness and sensitivity. Apply that to ourselves and in this context, sensitive to what's arising in the body.
So is that like what Lorna said one time about being present for your breath too?
Exactly. Yes. Another word for that phrase, present for your breath, is mindfulness of your breath. Let me go back then. Having a gentle awareness or sensitivity for what is arising within one's body without reaction or distraction. This grounds mindfulness to what is arising and passing away within one's frame of reference and develops mindfulness as a non-distracted, ongoing point of reference on the breath in the body. Imagine if we fell into the trap of gross analysis of anything that was arising in our body. Meditation would then be a constant vehicle for further distraction, wouldn't it? Okay? For the purpose the Buddha intended, to deepen concentration. It would never really serve any useful purpose that way, would it? Using these monks as an example of how to meditate. Furthering with my commentary. A distracted mind is detached from the body as a point of reference to what is occurring. When personalizing internal phenomena, the objectification then creates a separate object, distracting from the intended purpose of Shamatha-Vipassana meditation, deepening concentration. Shamatha-Vipassana meditation supports the proper application of mindfulness that unifies the mind in the body, establishing moment-by-moment mindfulness, mindfulness of life as life occurs. So when we start focusing on a bodily sensation or a bodily concept, even though the focus might be something that we refer to within the body, because we've objectified it, we've now taken the object. This is so hard to explain. I hope I'm doing. We've now taken the object. We've now taken our mind out of our body, and we've fractionated our mind, and we're looking at this object rather than having the mind united with the body. A mind united in the body is at peace with the mind and the body.
There are so many times in our lives where we spend so much time in our head that things like Qigong and all of those things that can bring you back into your body as it walks on the earth, as a stabilizing way of getting yourself out of your head and into your body, is so important. I think for me, that's what brought me here, was spending so much time in my head and not feeling that was productive at all, and that there had to be a better way to do things.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's so important. Misapplied uses of meditation only encourage that separation of the mind and the body. Mm-hmm. The Buddha understood that for us to be present, we have to be where we are, which is in our bodies. And a distracted mind, a mind rooted in ignorance, is continually focused outside of its body and outside of the life as life occurs. In other words, it's taken itself out of real time. It's in the past or in the future. And we certainly can't be in our body when my mind is in yesterday or tomorrow, can it? This unites, again, you could say the whole purpose within the right framework is to unite the body and the mind.
That's why the phrase, your mind wanders, I think is so accurate. That really describes it.
Yeah. And so when you think about what is the essence of concentration, and the point of mindfulness of the breath is to bring our focus into the one thing that grounds us into our body. And again, there's other references to meditation techniques that have you bring your breath to your foot or your nose or something, well, the nose isn't, or someplace else in your body. And there's useful applications of that, but not for deepening concentration. We breathe into our lungs, period. Our breath doesn't go anywhere else. And we don't have to manufacture anything. But when we keep our mindfulness on the simple and pure sensation of breathing in the body, we're uniting our mind with our body. Let me just go a little bit further. It's gotten on just a little bit, but the following instruction to calm bodily fabrications reinforces this point. To dispassionately remain mindful of whatever fabricated sensations arise, meaning fabricated by craving and clinging, rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, and return mindfulness to the four, to the breath. Train the mind to remain focused on the breath with a gentle and detached awareness of whatever is arising. Remember, feelings and thoughts are always going to be flowing. While dispassionately engaged in breath mindfulness, the Buddha's words, they train themselves. I will breathe in, calming bodily fabrications. They train themselves. I will breathe out, calming bodily fabrications. The intention is not to calm the bodily fabrication. The intention is to breathe in and let bodily fabrications calm. Breathe out. The action of breathing out without embellishment is calming bodily fabrications by uniting the breath and the body. Another way of saying that is the body is in a constant state of agitation when its mind isn't there. Mindlessness.
I had read that section a number of times, and I've always seen it opposite of what you just how you explained it. That
Oh, you mean
it's an active, as you're actively calming these fabrications.
yes?
While it's just like you're breathing, and that calms the fabrications.
When mindfulness is at the fore. When I'm still distracted, when my mindfulness isn't at the fore, meaning focus on my breath, then it seems of vital importance to calm these bodily fabrications, doesn't it? My mind is outside the body in that sense. I've objectified the experience. And what's my purpose for meditation? Now is the time to meditate. Now is the time to deepen concentration, not to be concerned about bodily fabrications. Mindfully, I breathe in, calming bodily fabrications. And then I breathe out, further calming bodily fabrications. Do you see?
The importance of commas.
Yeah.
And not karma comma, but commas.
Yes.
And that's it. I mean, if we're contemplating bodily fabrications, we're not here anymore. We're not in what's happening, what's occurring. Life as life occurs. We're in mental fabrications.
Yep. And what is in dependent origination? What follows ignorance? Mental fabrications.
More ignorance.
And then the whole chain of dependencies that ends up in ongoing suffering. And how do we end mental fabrications? We begin by developing deep concentration, by uniting the mind. I'm going to stop there. I think that's a good place to stop. Plus, it's 20 minutes to 9, so I think we should. Are there any questions directly related to this sutta and where we're going? Because then I want to go around the room, but I'd like to hear any questions or comments you do have on the sutta. I guess I just asked for it, but you can still. But also on the meditation instructions that we had when we started class. What do you feel about that? Liz, do you have your...
Yeah, I like the instructions because it really, just like asking us to sort of start calming down, in our conversations, it's another way of getting us into the realm of mindfulness. So that is helpful. But this whole idea, you were talking about sensitivity and, there's so many, myself included, you go through life feeling that you're a sensitive person, and what that person said offends you or hurts you or whatever, and that you can't help it because you're a sensitive person. And really, that's just another fabrication of the ego.
Yep, it is.
And once you start to realize that, then It's okay to be a sensitive person, but you don't have to take it personally.
That's beautiful.
Exactly.
Thank you, Liz. The Buddha was often ascribed almost supernatural powers because he could meet someone and immediately know everything about that person. I don't think it was because, in fact, my understanding of the Buddha, he wasn't supernatural in any way, but he was so mindfully present and so sensitive to what was going on around him. And in that way,
And he was not distracted.
he was completely present. And as we develop that type of sensitivity, and we gain the ability to kind of understand people almost as soon as we meet them. It really, you think of, well, again, I don't want to go off, but that was such a common occurrence when you read about, the Buddha and how he interacted with people. He knew immediately the right thing to say. Everything he said was always related to the Dhamma, but yet he said it in so many incredibly useful ways.
Without judgment, once he figured out who that person might be, or without judgment.
Yeah, even with murderers and very unsavory characters, he never reacted to them in a way that we might, or somebody lacking mindfulness might. Because for one thing, he wasn't threatened by it. He just understood it was all part of dukkha, it was what occurs in the world. And he was able to respond mindfully and sensitively. And we're gaining that same real ability. And you've heard me say that as we develop the path, as we develop awakening, we're simply more mindfully present with our life as our life occurs. We're more effective in that way too, because we make choices and decisions based on true wisdom, useful wisdom, rather than being so overly sensitive that we personalize everything. That was beautiful. Thank you. Well, let's go around the room. And again, I'd like to hear how you feel about the new meditation instructions, and it's okay to say you didn't like them. I probably won't listen, but I'll listen. Matthew, good to see you.
Really good to be here with everybody tonight and hear this sutta. This is really, really good. I also really like the new meditation lead-in, and I hope we keep doing that. Thanks.
Thank you. Tim, good to see you. We've missed you.
Good to see everybody. Yeah, I agree. Well,
Glad you're here. I'll talk to you soon.
Hi.
Helen, good to see you, and thank you for the t-shirt.
You're welcome. I saw it, I thought of you.
Thank
I guess for me, one of the things that I took from this tonight was that the point of meditation isn't to bring more stuff in, it's to leave it out. It's the absence of stuff that gives you clarity. And to try to make it about, something else defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
So it's not about stuff.
Yeah, thank you. That's the point of this sutta too. It's very simple and direct practice. David, good to see you tonight.
Well, I read it 3 times. I just found it to be such good instruction for someone new. And it had everything.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to read it 2 more times, but it gave such clear instruction and clarifying my direction. So I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. What did you think of the meditation instructions tonight?
Well, I've only heard the old instructions online.
That's right.
So I didn't have a ton of experience with it. So I'm open to the new stuff. Most of my meditation has been silent with no instructions.
Oh, okay.
So I'm open to certainly the new stuff.
Great. Hello, I didn't ask you, what did you think of the new guided
Um,
meditation?
You know, this is, well, it didn't strike me as terribly different, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It wasn't much.
Yeah. So it was an easy transition.
Okay, good.
So,
Yeah, really just, it incorporates a little bit more of the direct instructions on in-breath and out-breath and the arising and passing away. And that's really all that I wanted to incorporate, because that's really all that the Buddha teaches. It was something that was, that I was inferring, I guess, in the old instructions, but I realized a while ago as I was putting this article together, that I probably should incorporate more of that 4 foundations of mindfulness and the Anapanasati Sutta in the direct instructions, just to relate to them, that's all. So, great. Ram, good to see you tonight.
Good to be here. Yeah, I think I like the new instructions. You know, over the years now that I've been using, I've been meditating with the Sangha and with you. A lot of the changes in me have been about having the right intentions when I go sit.
Yep.
And this will refine that. Because I find myself very often meditating with the wrong intentions. It's, you know, that stuff is slowly falling away, but it's having these reminders there is good to do it right.
Yeah. Hence the Eightfold Path, you know, there's a right and a wrong way to do
Right
that.
and wrong. There's a lot of wrong that you can do.
Yeah, there is.
It's just so easy to and it's all about, you know, the basis of ignorance that you know, where we're sitting.
Yeah.
Arising out of that.
In all the modern applications that claim to be based on Anapanasati, and they miss the whole point. I got to put them down, but it's just the case. The other reason why I'm just introducing this or adding to the meditation instructions now is, as a Sangha, without this sutta, I felt we really didn't have the right context to understand it. So I thought about doing this when we went through the Satipatthana Sutta over the summer, but I thought it best to get both of these suttas introduced in our Sangha and us focused on it to understand how it actually relates. So, thank you. Carrie, good to see you again. We missed you.
I'm really happy to be back, and I missed everyone. I like the new instructions. You said it perfectly. It's pure and simple, which I need, because I don't know if it was more complicated if I would be able to stick with it. So
That's a good point.
The new instructions were just natural, really, I felt. Not very different, but I love the callbacks. I always appreciate them, that, you know, and just a couple extra words in there, it makes it better. So.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here tonight. Lorna?
For me, the new instructions pointed directly to impermanence. Just impermanence, impermanence, impermanence. And I hadn't, I wouldn't say I hadn't ever seen my meditation like that before, but you just can't run away from it. Your mind cannot run away from impermanence with those instructions.
Thank you.
It made a huge difference to me, a huge difference. And when you close the meditation, I didn't close with you. I mean, I was so in with my in breath and out breath, and I didn't close my meditation with you until a few minutes later. It's kind of like drifted away because he was by then speaking, and I didn't even try to close my meditation with him. I just enjoyed it. make a huge difference to me, really. And also the bit about the minute, now is the time to meditate. I like that. It's just like, okay, this is what we're doing now. Now is the time to meditate. I should put that in. So, you need to change all your recordings
I am.
on your website
I'll do it soon.
to your new meditation method. I thought it was terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I will be changing the recordings on the website too, over the next couple of days. I wanted to try it out first to see. I was pretty confident that would be the reaction, and you pick up on an important point. It does remind us of the whole point is to understand the impermanent nature of all things, that all things arise and pass away, and to focus on the breath and seeing it that way encourages that understanding. Liz, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you. Good to be here. This is all based on the information as it's given within the context. So the small nuances of deepening the practice is always appreciated through things like the new lead-in for meditation. It's always, Lorna and Maura talk about playing with things, like that idea of sharing the breath with the moment and things like that. And I think that that's what's so fascinating about this is the importance of context, and then the importance of even the smallest nuance of something. And that once you start to understand those little nuances, you can say, I've got it now in this deeper level. I thought I understood it before, but now I understand it at a whole nother level. And that's what's so pleasurable and fascinating about this is that, when you first sit down to meditate, you say, okay, well, I'm going to calm down today by listing the Eightfold Path and developing acronyms for how I can remember each of them. And then so you sit there and you say, okay, and now do I remember the name of that sutta? And so your mind is like, it's within the Dhamma, but you're not breathing in and breathing out. You're trying to say, I need to be smarter about all this. But then once you sort of relax and understand that in every meditation, you're giving yourself permission to sit and to not do anything else. And it's not the time to memorize the Eightfold Path. You don't have to do you don't have to do anything, which is so hard for so many of us because we're always doing. But I think the thing that's the most fascinating is understanding everything within context, because you carry that out into the world with you. You can understand the way things happen within the world and how people respond to them within context and without context, reactions to things. But if you start to train yourself to look for those contextual things and the nuances for how you can deepen your practice, I think it's really powerful.
Okay.
I didn't mean to say all that, but
No, I'm glad you did.
Couldn't stop.
Thank you for all that. The seeing the world in the right context changes everything.
Changes everything.
And that context is described as Four Noble Truths.
Yeah.
And when we've developed that, and we have that foundation for how to see things and how to interact with things, then we can engage in that playful nuance. And we really gain an understanding of, or at least I have, the absurdity of the world and the things that we and I take seriously and personalize. It's absurd. Thank you. Bonnie, good to see you tonight. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm really tired tonight, but I did really like having a new instruction because it sort of just like dials up the focus into the breath, which is, I think, when I'm meditating I'm always more conscious of the in-breath. So the idea that in is the arising and out is the falling away. And that, and trying to also acknowledge what arises, but that this is focus instead of trying to figure out a model for whatever else is going on.
Yeah.
So it really elevates the practice. And I think when you're doing something all the time, you do it the same, and you do fall into, like you were saying, conditioned a little bit. And you were saying earlier that maybe so we would be resistant to the newness, but in a way, being introduced to something new, it heightens the, like, some sort of physical awareness and something else to focus on exactly what you're supposed to focus on.
Yeah.
Because you always say come into the room, into your body, your breath in your body, but to do those few extra prompts in a way, really, I think. So I really found it valuable.
Thank you. Thank you for all of you for your feedback. I will be making the changes on the website when we get around to it, but we'll be using this meditation method now until it changes again and exercising impermanence. I'm going to continue the talks on this sutta Thursday and Saturday and probably next Tuesday because I want to bring the context into each sangha because each class really is almost completely different sanghas, a little bit of overlap, but that's important. So you can listen to that online, or you can come back on Thursday and Saturday and get the whole thing if you can. But it will be available online. Tomorrow's talk, I've changed the Wednesday talk rather than being something like a class that I read a sutta and comment on it, to most of the time it's going to be on something that generally comes up during the classes or from online students. So tomorrow's noontime talk is going to be on gentleness and how gentleness relates to the hindrances and how we should be mindful of it that way. So that's the coming week. And then on January 2nd, we're going to start the next Truth of Happiness Dhamma study here and on Saturday, like we did last
On the
year.
2nd of January?
Yeah. I think the 2nd is the first Tuesday of the year. Yeah. And we'll do, again, like last year, the class that we have on Tuesday will be repeated on Saturday. So if you miss one or et cetera, or it snows or something, as a Sangha, we can go through that. Again, it's pretty powerful. And the May retreat is going to be more now on the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the Anapanasati Sutta. We're going to have that 4 days to get more into this part of with more emphasis on this part of the Buddhist teaching, but we'll always have at least 1 or 2 talks on dependent origination and a few of the other things. So that should be interesting. I'll have the registration too, the reservation up for the retreat right after the first of the year too. They just sent me something about something. All right, let's finish with metta like we always do. Find your relaxed meditative posture, and gently close your eyes and gently close your mouths. And again, take a moment to become aware of the sensation of breathing in your body, and let that mindfulness of your breath cease any thoughts that are distracting to the past or to the future, or that may have arisen from our talk tonight. And these are the Buddha's words on metta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class. Peace.
Peace.
And thank you for the folks that joined online. Mary, if you're there, there's 3 or 4 that are there.
Nightmare.
Night, Mary.